Meadow. Apollo. Apollo says hey, Magdalene. Player says hello, Apollo. What are you doing? Apollo says looking for frogs. Artemis says she saw one the other day, and we're trying to collect a bunch. Player says what do you need the frogs for? Apollo says like I'll tell you. You'll snitch. Option 1 of 2 I won't. Option 2 of 2 if you don't tell me, maybe I will snitch. Your mother won't be happy to hear about whatever you're up to. Apollo says Artemis always says mom doesn't care. Mom yells, but that's about it. Sorry, Magdalene. I can't risk this one. Try asking Artemis. Apollo.
Hey, Magdalene, try to stay.
Artemis. Artemis says hey, Magdalene. Player says hey, Artemis. Apollo said you're catching frog. Artemis says yeah. What about? Player says he told me to come ask you why. He wouldn't say anything. Artemis says he didn't tell you? Christ, finally. He's learning to keep his mouth shut. Option 1 of 2 AW, come on, just tell me. Option 2 of 2 BUT you'll tell me, right? Artemis says ugh, fine. Just promise you won't tell. Player says yeah, of course. Artemis says oh, alright. We want to put them in the altar, so at Mass, Father Thomas reaches for the Eucharist and frogs go everywhere. Option 1 of 3 HAHA. I can't wait to see Father Thomas's face if you can get away with it. Option 2 of 3 WHY in the world do you want to do that? Option 3 of 3 THAT, seems like a really bad idea. You've already been to confession this year. Option 1 of 3 HAHA. I can't wait to see Father Thomas's face if you can get away with it. Artemis says he'll never expect to summon frogs in his sermon on the Egyptian plagues. Option 1 of 2 WELL, good luck. Option 2 of 2 be careful, Artemis. That could backfire on you. Option 1 of 2 WELL, good luck. Option 2 of 2 be careful, Artemis. That could backfire on you. Artemis says don't worry about us, Magdalene. See you later, Artemis.
Forest. Try to stay waterfall.
Player says a pig? Out here, it must have broke out of its pen. I wonder who it belongs to. Mudwort is always useful for colds and fevers. It might not be as powerful as when we gather it on St. John's Eve, but it should still work. Old salt mine. Mine shaft. Mine shaft. Player says if I want to depict the mural as accurately as possible, I have to go down the shaft myself. The entrance is so steep. No one's used it in years. There must be some way to get down there. Option 1 of 4 I could probably climb down, even though it looks dangerous. Option 2 of 4 if I rigged a rope to the top beams, I'd be able to get down more easily. Option 3 of 4 Baltas might have some tools. I'll bet he could help me rig a way to climb down there. Option 4 of 4 Apollo and Artemis are always bragging about how they sneak around the ruins. Maybe I can ask them how they do it. Option 2 of 4 if I rigged a rope to the top beams, I'd be able to get down more easily. Option 4 of 4 Apollo and Artemis are always bragging about how they sneak around the ruins. Maybe I can ask them how they do it. Player says I'll have to come back later. Mine shaft. Option 1 of 2 WELL, I could go down now, but it might be better to find another way down. Option 2 of 2 I don't know if I have everything I need to climb into the mine safely. Should I go anyway? Option 2 of 2 I don't know if I have everything I need to climb into the mine safely. Should I go anyway? Option 1 of 2 climb down the shaft. Option 2 of 2 find another way. Mine shaft.
Waterfall. Old salt mine. Forest. Try to stay Apollo.
Apollo says oh, hey, Magdalene. Player says can you show me how you and Artemis get into the salt mine? Apollo says the mine? Why? It's all gross and creepy. Player says I need to get down there and see what the pagans and Romans left behind. I need references for my mural. Apollo says, oh, the mural? I would ask Artemis about that. She's pretty protective of the mine. Option 1 of 2 ALL right. I'll go find her. Option 2 of 2 BUT can't you just show me? Artemis doesn't have to know. Apollo says haha. She'll find out. She finds everything out. Sorry, Magdalene. If she says yes, I'll show you later. Player says I'll see you later then. Apollo says see you, Magdalene. Thomas. Thomas says God bless you, Magdalene. Player says God bless you, Father Thomas. Option 1 of 2 I think I know where your missing key went. Option 2 of 2 ANY luck finding the tabernacle key? Thomas says alas, no. It remains out of reach. Player says I'm sure it will turn up eventually, Father. Thomas says yes, as the Lord sees fit. In the meantime, I shall keep looking. Knock, and the door will be opened, after all. God bless you, Magdalene.
Thomas, no.
Paul. Andreas. Paul. Paul says good morning, Magdalene. How's the mural coming along? Player says well, I think. I'm off to start the first part of the mural today. I'll paint the founding of Tassing and the Romans. Paul says well, you won't want for any models. Tassing is littered with Roman ruins. It's almost a nuisance. What sort of mural are you creating, Magdalene? I believe Klaus was planning on a fresco. Option 1 of 3 WELL. I'll start with the intonatio, and then paint the fresco over it, so that I have a clear consistency. Option 2 of 3 there's a few different techniques, but I think a fresco suits the Rathaus wall best. Option 3 of 3 WHY? Is the council planning to interfere with how I mix my paints? Option 1 of 3 WELL. I'll start with the intonatio, and then paint the fresco over it, so that I have a clear consistency. Paul says I see. Do you have enough plaster? The Rathaus wall is so large, I was worried it wouldn't stay wet for long. Player says since when did the town miller know so much about art? Paul says it's been an interest of mine since childhood, but my father disapproved. After my mother and I left Tassing, we stayed with her family for a few months before we heard what happened. Your father's friend, Andreas. He encouraged me to draw. While we were away, I studied in my uncle's library. I've collected books about various art styles since we returned. Option 1 of 3 I had no idea, Paul. Why didn't you want to paint the mural yourself? Option 2 of 3 I can't imagine what I would have done if Dad didn't let me learn how to print and paint. Option 3 of 3 THAT sounds like it was a difficult time to live through. Option 1 of 3 I had no idea, Paul. Why didn't you want to paint the mural yourself? Paul says haha. I'm not nearly as skilled as you or your father. I know I had my doubts about you taking on the project, Magdalene, but you're the most skilled artist in Tassing, after your father, of course. Well, anyway. I'm glad the mural is going well. Forgive my sudden questioning about it. I've been so busy preparing for the council's next meeting, I haven't had as much time with Anna as usual. She says I get a bit frantic when I'm overwhelmed. Option 3 of 3 Option 1 of 3 is the council working on something new? Option 2 of 3 I didn't think council work was all that serious in such a small town. Option 3 of 3 maybe you should take some time off from the council, Paul. Option 1 of 3 is the council working on something new? Paul says we're considering yearly maintenance checks on every house in Tassing. The ideas had quite a bit more pushback than we'd anticipated. Option 1 of 3 NEW ideas always face some kind of opposition. I don't think you should let that stop you. Option 2 of 3 I can understand the utility of the proposition, but it might feel like a nuisance. Option 3 of 3 I can't imagine why. I'd certainly love it if my neighbors nosed their way into my house every year. Option 1 of 3 NEW ideas always face some kind of opposition. I don't think you should let that stop you. Paul says thank you, Magdalene. I understand the hesitation. Folk like to look after their own homes, their own land. But this would help protect those in Tassing who don't have the skill to fix things themselves. Widows like Agnes, or Gret. In any case, the matter is far from resolved. I imagine spring will come before anything is actually. I had better get back to work. Thank you for letting me interrupt your day, Magdalene. God bless you. Player says until later. Paul.
Paul says hello. Magdalene, Morehouse. Mill. Alright. Laura says hello. Anna says God bless you. Magdalene. Mill. Morehouse. Church Farms. Fagan says good morning. Magdalene. Mill. Church and Tuckers. Our Lady of Mill. Martin Power. Church and Tuckers. Church and Tuckers. Martin Powerhouse. Town Commons.
Brigida. Brigida says Magdalene. How are you keeping? Option 1 of 2. I am eager to continue work on the mural. I have so much to do before Christmas. Option 2 of 2. Fine enough, given the circumstances. Option 1 of 2. I am eager to continue work on the mural. I have. Brigida says I'm certain it will be the pride of Tassing when you're through. You've always had your mother's talent for art. And how is your dad? Option 1 of 2. You re one of the only people who've asked how I'm doing before asking about my dad. Option 2 of 2. His mind is fading. I pray for him every night. Option 1 of 2. You re one of the only people who've asked how I'm doing before asking about my dad. Brigida says. I know how it is to be the sole caregiver. Yourself disappears behind the needs of the person you're looking after. I worry about you, carrying that weight alone. Caring for someone can be an arduous task, even if you love them. It's alright if you find it challenging. The Lord sees your labors for your dad and admires them, but I believe God will pull your dad through, whatever the doctor says. We need him. Option 1 of 2. God willing, you're right. I am at his mercy. Option 2 of 2. I don't know what I'll do if he dies. I feel crazy even thinking about it. Option 1 of 2. God willing, you're right. I am at his mercy. Brigida says God willing, amen. Have you thought about what you'll do if your dad doesn't come through this? Option 1 of 3. Dad would want me to keep up the printing press. Option 2 of 3. I truly don't know. Option 3 of 3. I can't think that far ahead right now. Option 1 of 3. Dad would want me to keep up the printing press. Brigida says wouldn't that be a sight? Are you sure you could handle it? It's a lot to manage on your own. But you're a good girl, Magda. There are any number of families in Tassing who'd be happy to take you. You have someone in mind, don't you? Option 1 of 2. I promise you I do not. Option 2 of 2. You must mean OTZ. Brigida says het. He's about as subtle as his father, God rest Otto's soul. Ah. I miss him. Player says I wish I'd got to meet him. Properly, I mean. Brigida says he made an impression, that's for certain. Oh. The girls around town knew better than to moon after him, though that didn't stop some of us. He was Eva's from the start. As OTZ appears to be yours. But if nothing ever comes of that, know that you're always welcome in my family, Magda. Kraft's a nice boy, if a bit immature. But he's still growing. Player says are you trying to set me up with your son? Brigida says can you blame a mother for trying? You're a good, respectable girl, Magda. Any family would be lucky to have as a daughter. Option 1 of 3. I guess I'll consider it. Option 2 of 3. I don't mean to be rude, but I'd prefer decide in my own time. Option 3 of 3. I am not sure we're a good match. Option 1 of 3. I guess I'll consider it. Brigida says thank you, sweet girl. Not every marriage starts off on solid footing. But if you pray, and work, and trust in the Lord, you can find it in time, believe me. Option 1 of 3. If it's not working out, how can you be sure a couple belongs together? Option 2 of 3. You not making the prospect sound very enticing. Option 3 of 3. Maybe I'll never get married. Option 1 of 3. If it's not working out, how can you be sure a couple belongs together? Brigida says God knows. He brings people together for a purpose. We don't need to understand it, only to have faith in Providence. In any case, I should get back to the chores. Remember what I said. Whatever happens, you're always welcome in my home. Option 1 of 3. Before I forget, I actually had a question about an old book. Option 2 of 3. Thanku, Brigida. Option 3 of 3. Noted. Until later. Option 1 of 3. Before I forget, I actually had a question about an old book. Player says Martin is supposed to have stolen it from that baron who was killed years ago. Do you know what happened to it? Brigitte says, oh, I hope this doesn't get me into any trouble, but I still have it, hidden in a drawer. Martin left it behind when he ran off. Player says, why'd you keep it? Brigitte says, what was I supposed to do? The baron was killed soon after, and there I was, holding his stolen book. I didn't want Martin to get in any more trouble than he was already in. I never read it, though. I don't read well. Option 1 of 2, I could take it off your hands. No one would ever know you kept it. Option 2 of 2, can I have it? Option 1 of 2, I could take it off your hands. No one would ever know you kept it. Brigitte says, I trust you to be true to your word, Magda. I'd like to have nothing more to do with it, to be frank. It reminds me of difficult times. A stolen book of a dead nobleman in our home. Perhaps it's spoiled our milk and turned our eggs all these years. Here you are. Please, don't tell anyone I had this. Player says, ah. Historia Tasha, oh, it's in Latin. I can understand a few words and phrases. I'll take a closer look in the evening. Thank you, Brigitte. You've been a big help. Brigitte says, of course, Magda. Be well now. God bless. Player says, you too, Brigitte. Until later, Brigitte.
Martin.
Martin says, morning, Magdalene. How's Klaus? Player says, enduring. Even when his speech is slurred, he keeps a cheerful heart. I don't know what life would be like without him. Martin says, Klaus is a good man, Magdalene. Tassing is a better place thanks to him. He's one of the few in Tassing who hasn't been on my back all this time. Player says, what do you mean? Martin says, don't pretend like you haven't heard. Townsfolk have whispered shit about me for years, so what if I occasionally get into a few brawls? I'm a honest man. I wasn't involved with what happened to Otto Zimmerman. I supported his cause. I've pulled my weight around here. Tilled the soil, salted the meats. Provided for Brigitte and Kraft. Don't even get me started on Agnes. Player says, what about Agnes? Martin says, always nagging at me, saying I'm a disappointment compared to Lucky. I wasn't even here when he died. Option 1 of 2, maybe that's the issue, you weren't here when you were needed. Option 2 of 2, say nothing. Option 1 of 2, maybe that's the issue, you weren't here when you were needed. Martin says, can't change the past, can I? I was just a dumb kid. I couldn't have helped Lucky in any way. Agnes is a bitter crone who should leave me be. I've done enough backbreaking work for this family. Can't a man just have a goddamned rest? Option 1 of 3, why are you always getting into fights, anyway? Option 2 of 3, Brigitte supports you in all this, doesn't she? Option 3 of 3, I believe you, Martin. You seem like you could use a respite. Option 1 of 3, why are you always getting into fights? And Martin says, sometimes an asshole just needs to get his teeth pounded in. Player says, does beating the shit out of someone really solve a problem? Martin says, maybe. Don't want to solve problems, though. Don't have the patience anymore. Had enough, just want what I'm owed. Right, I've lost enough time to this as it is. Time for you to go. Player says, until later, Martin.
Martin says, Kraft.
Else says, Magdalene, dear, will you be joining the group today? Player says, alas, I can't. What are you reading this time? Else says, we're continuing with the Nibelungen lead. Thank you for recommending it. Martha says, Siegfried is so heroic. Hetty says some of these words. I don't understand why they have to be this difficult. Yuta says it's so we'd come closer to the truth. Hetty says, Pa. The truth is always simple, so why not say it in simpler words? Else says, we'll get to the truth in no time. How is your father, Magdalene? Player says he's doing better. I think. Ursula says it's so lucky we have Dr. Stalls in Tassing. He's so committed, and fairly handsome, I have to admit. Hetty says, Ursula. I remember when Werner was a young little shit. At least he grew out of that. Yuta says he's so old. Hetty says, hey, he's several years younger than I am. Martha says, you're also old, dear Aunt Hetty. Hetty says humph. Else says now, enough excitement. We all pray God to bless Klaus with a speedy recovery. Hetty says he's been through a lot and survived so far. He'll be fine. It's the stubbornness. Option 1 of 2 people keep saying that. Option 2 of 2 you re-want to talk, Hetty. Option 1 of 2 people keep saying that. Hetty says to be able to live this long, one has to be as God has made us. Else says your work on the mural continues, Magdalene. Option 1 of 2 yes. I'm on my way to look into something as we speak. Option 2 of 2 not a day goes to waste. I'm on a tight schedule. Option 1 of 2 yes. I'm on my way to look into something as we speak. Else says very mysterious. Hetty says I still don't know if you painting our history, if this is appropriate. Martha says of course it is, Auntie Hetty. Yuta says Magdalene is so talented. Why shouldn't she be able to? Else says you will do us all proud, I am certain of that. Player says I will do my best. Until later. Matilda says God bless you, Magdalene. Player says hello, Matilda. Hello, Wojslav. How are you two? Wojslav says very well. The Lord has blessed us more than we deserve. Matilda says and how are you, Magdalene? I was worried with you keeping the house and the workshop all on your own. Let me bring by some soup for you and your father. Option 1 of 3 you re very kind, Matilda. Thank you. Option 2 of 3 dad would love that. I've hardly had a moment to cook a hot meal. Option 3 of 3 I wouldn't want to impose. Option 1 of 3 you re very kind, Matilda. Thank you. Matilda says not at all, Magdalene. This is how Wojslav and I serve Tassing. Our vocation may have changed, but our gratitude to God and the town has not. Option 1 of 2 you've always been so dedicated to the town. Option 2 of 2 it's hard to imagine you two ever lived in the abbey. Option 1 of 2 you've always been so dedicated to the town. Matilda says your neighbors took care of us in difficult time. Wojslav says ha. Sometimes those days feel like another life, a harder time, to be sure. Option 1 of 3 life feels pretty hard now. Option 2 of 3 I thought the abbey was better off than the town in those years. Option 3 of 3 were the Benedictines anything like the Poor Clares? Option 1 of 3 life feels pretty hard now. Option 3 of 3 were the Benedictines anything like the Poor Clares? Matilda says we lived simple lives of devotion, but Wojslav says not that simple. Matilda says I'm given to understand they don't make art in the convent now. Such a shame, in that beautiful workshop. In any case, a nun's vows include dedication to a simple life, with all the challenges that entails. But I struggled with my vows, my discipline. I couldn't live as my sisters did. I broke my vows. As did Wojslav. Player says you fell in love. Wojslav says he. We did. Well, I seduced her. Matilda says you certainly did not. Wojslav says are you telling young Magda here that you seduced me? Matilda says Wojslav, please. Haha. Player says so you left the abbey? Matilda says though no one learned of what we did, the matter ate at my heart. Wojslav says that, and being falsely accused of murdering the old baron terrified you, and rightly so. Matilda says we all must account for our sins, Magdalene. I was afraid I would account for mine sooner than I thought. Wojslav says those were the hardest years of my life. Matilda says I repented and prayed to God to absolve me. Wojslav says but the Lord always provides, even in the darkest days. Matilda says the abbey's destruction gave us a second chance. Option 1 of 3 I can't imagine that the townsfolk were too happy to let you stay. Option 2 of 3 it must be strange to leave that life after so long. Option 3 of 3 that must have been incredibly difficult. Option 1 of 3 I can't imagine that the townsfolk were too happy to let you stay. Wojslav says there was some suspicion at first, yes. But we proved useful in the days following, and soon they came round. Matilda says the Lord forgives more readily than man, Magdalene. Never think that you must remain in a place that causes you to sin, even if others think it godly. Option 1 of 2 I am glad you two are finally able to live life together. You both deserve it. Option 2 of 2 I never realized you two went through so much together. Option 1 of 2. I am glad you two are finally able to live life together. You both deserve it. Matilda says only by the grace of God are we in this life together. Wojcislav says may it be many more years before we part. Matilda says God willing. Anyway, Magdalene, I'll send that soup over to you shortly. Option 1 of 2. Thanku, Matilda. Option 2 of 2. God bless you both. Option 1 of 2. Thanku, Matilda. Wojcislav says God bless you, Magda. Matilda says God bless. Matilda. Simon says hey, Mag, I heard what happened to your dad. How's he doing? Player says resting. He suffered a severe blow to the head. I'm worried, to say the least. Simon says Hans sends his regards. The Bauer household is praying for a swift recovery. Option 1 of 2 EVEN Craft. Option 2 of 2 Thanku, and thank Hans and Yuta as well. Option 1 of 2 EVEN Craft, Simon says humph. I'd hope so, but honestly, I doubt it. Kraft's a little shit who's not man enough to feel something for other people. No wonder he doesn't do any work at the farm. Why would he? It's the others who suffer the consequence. Player says what is his problem? Simon says who knows. He doesn't listen to anyone lately. Not even his dad. Not that there's much to listen there, old Martin's enough of a shit as well, shame about that. But Hans manages to hold things mostly together, so. Option 1 of 2 Hans seems a good-hearted man, and a solid father. Option 2 of 2 Do you miss your father? Your real one, I mean. Option 1 of 2 Hans seems a good-hearted man, and a solid father. Simon says yet. I'm glad he took Heilwig and me into his home all those years ago. I still kind of miss Joseph, Dad, I mean. Even though I don't really remember much of him, he's become a haze of sorts. A faint echo. A feeling. An occasional emotion. I was so young when he got killed. Mom said I had trouble understanding what had happened for a long time. Option 1 of 2 I understand. My mom, she's like an empty hole in my life. I have nothing of her. Option 2 of 2 It's not easy to experience with this type of loss and grief. Option 1 of 2 I understand. My mom, she's like an empty hole in my life. I have nothing of her. Simon says yet, you never even got to see her, right? Not even a memory. Hey, suppose you have yourself for comparison. God molded you after her. I can imagine how she could have been like. Stubborn and unruly, yet. Option 1 of 3 But can I know if I'm actually like my mom? All I have are stories from people. Option 2 of 3 If that is what it takes. I don't see people of wealth and power giving the rest of us much headway. Option 3 of 3 I am not stubborn and unruly. Simon says haha. You don't have to believe me if you don't want to. Anyway, the winter draws closer, so I got a lot of preparations to take care of. I truly hope Klaus recovers soon. God look after you both. Player says until later, Simon. Hans says hello. Magdalene. Player says hello. Hans says, I hope your dad recovers quickly. He's a good man. Option 1 of 3 Dr. Stalls thinks I should prepare myself for the worst. Option 3 of 3 I hope so too. Option 2 of 3 Thanku. I'll tell him you said that. Option 1 of 3 Dr. Stalls thinks I should prepare myself for the worst. Hans says I'm sorry, Magdalene. I'll pray it doesn't come to that. This town has seen too many terrible things. But we've recovered before. Maybe the Lord will return your dad to health, too. Player says I pray you're right. Hans says be glad you have this time with him, I say. Wish I'd had as much with Heilwig. Anyway, I should get back to it. Player says until later, Hans. Town Commons, Hans. Hans says hello, Magdalene. Player says hello, Hans says. Did you need something? Option 1 of 2 Just wanted to see what you were doing. Option 2 of 2 How are you doing? Option 1 of 2 Just wanted to see what you were doing. Hans says well, I was just about to leave. I have to go meet Big Jurg soon. Player says why? Hans says stuff in the forest needs doing. Player says like what? Hans says to lift logs. Player says, why would you do that? Hans says we lift big logs to see who's stronger. It's a contest. Option 1 of 3. Option 2 of 3 how long have you been doing? Option 3 of 3 does anyone else participate in this contest? Hans says not usually. There aren't many others in tassing strong enough. Other than Big Jurg, Simon's big, like Sepp was, but he's not interested. He's always busy taking care of the farm. Maybe Apollo can join us one day. He's been getting stout the last few years. Player says all right. Who's winning so far? Hans says Jurg. But barely. I've been gaining on him. He's growing older and softer with his council work. Haha. Option 1 of 3 HUH. I see. Option 2 of 3 SO. This is a thing that men just do from time to time. Option 3 of 3 WELL. Good luck with option 2 of 3 SO. This is a thing that men just do from time to time. Hans says me and Jurg. Sure. I don't know about anyone else. You're welcome to join us, Magdalene. Option 1 of 2 perhaps you haven't noticed, but I'm not very big myself. Option 2 of 2 you happen to have small logs that would suit me? Hans says plenty of trees in the forest. We'll find you what you need. Maybe it'd put some meat on those bones. Option 1 of 2 thanks, but I need to focus on the mural. Option 2 of 2, sure. Maybe I'll drop by someday. Hans says Christ, Jurg will get a kick out of that. You really mean it, right? Option 1 of 2 OH, absolutely. Option 2 of 2. Option 1 of 2 OH, absolutely. Hans says great, I should get back to work now. Until later, Magdalene. Player says until then. Town comments. Hans. Hans says hello, Magdalene. Player says hello, Hans. Hans says, did you need something? Player says how are you doing? Hans says fine enough. Weather's getting colder. Player says and the family? Hans says healthy and hard-working. Simon's taking care of the winter provision. He's a good boy. Proud of him, and you know how smart Yuta is. Elsa's teaching her to read at that reading circle of hers. Maybe once she knows how to read, she could marry a rich man. Player says I don't know where she'll find one of those in Tassing. Hans says more of them coming through every year, you know. Between the Saints, the Golden Hand, and the Rathaus, we could be a real city someday. Maybe then my grandkids or my great-grandkids can write books instead of read them. Player says you don't want them to be farmers. Hans says us Bowers are smarter than we look. No one ever believes that, but it's true. Dad always said we were the shiniest apples in the bushel. People just didn't know to look. I just want my family to have every chance. Option 1 of 2 for what it's worth. I think you're plenty smart, Hans. Option 2 of 2 I doubt they'll get that in Tassing. Option 1 of 2 for what it's worth. I think you're plenty smart, Hans. Hans says, kind of you to say, Magdalene. I should get back to it. Until later. Player says until then. Hans. Player says hello, Peter. Can I talk to you for a moment? Peter says what's that? Option 1 of 2 I was wondering if you could tell me some of the stories about Tassing. Option 2 of 2 can I talk to you for a moment? Option 1 of 2 I was wondering if you could tell me some of the stories about Tassing. Peter says oh. The old tales. Cough. It's been so damn long since anyone had a thought to ask me about what I know, but there's still a few of the old tales knocking about in this skull. Option 1 of 2 are there any myths from even before the Romans came to Tassing? Option 2 of 2 do you know any Roman legends about Tassing? Option 1 of 2 are there any myths from even before the Romans came to Tassing? Peter says of course there are. The Romans weren't the first ones to live here, you know. There are spirits older than the saints that live in these woods. Older than the Romans. They protected Tassing before St. Moritz ever set a blessed foot in town. Option 1 of 3 WHAT Sword of Spirit. Option 2 of 3 BUT Father Thomas says that the only good spirit is the Holy Ghost. Everything else is of the devil. Option 3 of 3 I thought spirits only caused trouble, spoiling milk, making livestock sick. Things like that. Option 1 of 3 WHAT sort of spirit. Peter says the sort that I'm getting at. Didn't your father teach you patience, Magdalene? Cough cough. Player says sorry. Peter says it's Perchta and her wild hunt that scare them evil ones away. They've protected Tassing since its founding day. Long before those Romans, our ancestors roamed these mountains under a great chieftain called Ritus. Player says wait, isn't Ritus a Latin name? Peter says Player says the ending on his name is the masculine singular ending common on most male Roman names. Peter says plenty of names end with the same letters. Doesn't make them Latin, does it? Now, quit your yammering and listen. Folk weren't as kind as they are now, and the tribes fought one another for the best land. The old chieftain was a yellow-bellied coward who neglected the old gods. He was too proud to make offering. Because of him, the gods favored other tribes, and Ritu's people had no land to call their own. Instead, they wandered through these mountains and valleys, hunting and gathering what they could to survive. Cough. One day, when winter was approaching, Ritus went hunting, and found a wounded wolf tangled in a trap. But instead of killing the beast, as most men would, he helped the beast and loosed it from it. Option 1 of 3 Was the wolf a spirit in disguise? Option 2 of 3 Why would he do that? Wolves kill livestock. Carl told me 2 of his sheep were killed by wolves last month. Option 3 of 3 sounds like Ritus was a bad chieftain, too. Even I know it's foolhardy to let a wolf loose when you're hunting. Peter says heh. Then you'd miss the wisdom of our ancestors, girl. Cough. The old gods are keen to repay favors done, and Perchta is the goddess of the wild hunt. The wolves are her animals. She leads the wild hunt, and the wolves lead the hunts of the forest. Back in my day, folk knew it was bad luck to kill a wolf. Now, I'm the only one who remembers these things. Cough cough. Perchta saw Ritu's action and took favor on him, and told the wolf to lead the chief to her sacred spring. Ritus led his people to the spring, and claimed it for his homeland, and we've been in this valley ever since. Then those goddamned Romans came and destroyed everything, but you see? There were other gods protecting this place before St. Moritz. It's why a few of us still honor Perchta. She protects us against witches and fiends. Option 1 of 4 It's a wonderful story. Perfect for the first part of the mural. Option 2 of 4 But God protects us from spirits and devils now. We don't need Perchta. Our salvation is in Christ. Option 3 of 4 That's all superstition. All this just sounds like a story told to children. Option 4 of 4 Smokey told me about a similar story with a wolf and a nymph, except his was about the Roman gods. Peter says Pa. The Romans tried to wipe out all of the old ways. Made everything about themselves. You think those wine-addled fools could stand to let us have our own custom? They may have built this town, but they didn't write its stories. Cough. God sent Perchta to protect these woods from those sun-brained bastards. Even if I'm the only one who can see her through the old customs. Player says what about the Romans? Do you know any Roman legends of Peter says Roman legends? I don't bother with stories from outsiders, or tales of gods that aren't our own. The Romans did nothing but conquer our people and destroy this town. We've spent generation after generation building Tassing back up from those days. And still, our traditions keep dying, with no one to carry them on. Only Isila's given a damn about them these days. Option 1 of 2 I am asking about them right now. Option 2 of 2 That's why I want to know, Peter. These stories need to be on the mural. Peter says the mural? Fine. But I don't know any of the old Roman shit. Player says alright, I have a lot to think about. Thank you for sharing your stories with me, Peter. Peter says humph. At least someone wants to listen to me. Little Ursula used to sit by me years ago and listen to everything about the old customs. Too busy for that now, of course. But you might talk to her. She might remember more than I do now. Used to listen to the widow, too. Old Adelia knew more about the old ways than any of us. I'm tired. Talking so much has made my jaw ache. Player says I'll leave you to rest, then. God bless you, Peter. Ill Peter says humph. Ill Peter.
Magdalene, Big Yerk.
Big Yerk says ah, Magdalene. How are the hinges on your door? Option 1 of 2 fine, I guess. Option 2 of 2 excuse me? Option 1 of 2 fine, I guess. Big Yerk says maybe Endris should take a look at them. I would have asked your father, but, well, anyway, you wouldn't believe how many people in this town leave their hinges to rust. Option 1 of 2 is that something the council is worried about? Option 2 of 2 I didn't realize you had such an interest in hinges. Option 1 of 2 is that something the council is worried about? Big Yerk says well, Dad always taught me to keep the house in good repair, if we can afford it. And now Paul would like to institute a yearly check of all homes in Tassing. Option 1 of 2 WHAT do you think of the idea, Yerk? Option 2 of 2 IT does seem a bit nosy to me. Why not just let folks take care of themselves? Option 1 of 2 WHAT do you think of the idea, Yerk? Big Yerk says well, it's not a bad thing, but I don't see why we need to make it official. Everyone in Tassing helps each other. As I see it, if someone notices a house in disrepair, we all pitch in to fix it. To do anything else would be unchristian. But if Paul wants to see it through, I'm happy to go along with it. Makes me feel useful, you know. Speaking of, I'd better get back to work. Nice to chat with you, Magda. Player says see you later, Yerg. Big Yerg. Big Yerg says hello. Gertner House.